The morning was quiet, the kind of stillness that comes before the day fully wakes. Pale sunlight slipped between the bamboo stalks, casting long, broken shadows across the yard. A rooster's call carried faintly from somewhere beyond the fields, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. De sat on the wooden step of the porch, his elbows resting loosely on his knees, a conical hat lying upside down beside him. His gaze was steady but far away, fixed on something beyond the narrow dirt road that wound past the gate. "I don't have all the materials for the new house yet," he said, his voice low, almost as if speaking to the air itself. The words felt heavy. "Not until my ex-wife comes back so we can settle the property. Only then will I start building the new home for me, for Quinn, and for little Maya." The morning light caught the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, traces of years that had been harder than they should have been. But beneath them, there was something steadier, a quiet determination. "For now," he went on, "I'll work, earn what I can, buy a few materials to repair the old bamboo house. Fix it up so she and Maya have a place to stay for the time being." He reached down, took the hat in his hands, and turned it slowly, feeling the worn rim beneath his fingers. "When the new house comes," he murmured, half to himself, "the chickens and ducks will be there too. Everyone together, safe." De rose to his feet. The wooden step creaked softly under his weight. Inside, the light slipped through cracks in the woven walls and fell in narrow strips across the floor. Outside, the morning had already warmed, but here in the dim interior, the air was still cool, scented faintly with smoke from last night's fire. Maya sat cross-legged on the reed mat, her small hands resting on the soft, speckled fur of BB, the limping dog, who lay curled against her side. The child's hair fell loosely over her face, catching in the morning light that filtered through the gaps. From the corner, Quinn sat with her back against a wooden post, slowly moving a woven fan in her lap. There was a gentleness in her posture, but also a heaviness, the kind that lingers when the body is tired before the day has truly begun. Maya looked up from stroking the dog. "Mom," she asked softly, "where's Uncle Da?" Quinn's lips curved faintly, though her voice carried a hint of weariness. "He's gone to work, my love," she replied. "Today I feel a bit better, but these past few days I've been feeling dizzy. I don't really know why." Maya tilted her head, studying her mother with quiet concern. "You'll get better when you take your medicine," she said with the certainty of a child who believes that care and time can fix anything. Quinn's eyes softened. "Yes," she murmured. "I'm taking it, but the cough still hasn't gone away." The fan in her hand moved in slow, deliberate arcs. Maya stood and padded over to her, picking up the old wooden comb from the low shelf. The occasional shuffle of BB settling on the mat and the soft sigh that escaped Quinn's lips, part fatigue, part gratitude, and something else, the fragile comfort of having her daughter so close, filled the quiet. By the time De left the cluster of houses behind, the morning sun had risen high enough to cast a warm glow over the fields. The dirt path beneath his feet was firm and dry, each step sending up the faint scent of dust and grass. Dragonflies skimmed the surface of the narrow irrigation canal that ran beside the road. Somewhere, a cow's low call drifted lazily across the air. He walked with steady purpose, the strap of his work bag biting into his shoulder, the brim of his conical hat shading his eyes. Beyond the bend, the green of the neighboring village's fields stretched wide, patches of vegetables, young rice, and further still, the tall, swaying reeds of sedge grass. A man stood waiting near the edge of one of the fields, a long-handled hoe resting across his shoulder. He raised a hand in greeting. "Morning, Da, looking for work?" Da nodded, stepping closer. "Morning. Yes. Anything that needs doing today?" The man gestured toward the far side of the field where several workers were bent over in the sun. "We're pulling weeds and cutting sedge. Think you can handle it?" A faint smile crossed Da's face. I can handle it. Just point me where to start." Within moments, his bag was set aside, and his hands were in the soil. The ground was warm, crumbling easily beneath his fingers as he worked his way down the row, pulling stubborn weeds from between the neat lines of sedge. The plants themselves stood knee-high, their green blades rustling in the breeze like whispers. The man worked a few rows over, his voice carrying across the open space. "This is sedge grass. We cut it, dry it, and then weave it into mats and baskets. Good work if you've got the patience." De looked up briefly, wiping the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "It's beautiful," he said simply. "Hard work, but I like that." The sun climbed higher, beating down on his back, and his shirt grew damp and heavy. Yet there was a quiet steadiness in the way he moved, each motion deliberate. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the image of a patched roof over Quinn's bamboo house stayed with him. A small goal, but enough to keep his hands moving, his focus sharp. By late afternoon, the heat had softened, and the light had turned a warmer shade of gold. De made his way back along the dirt path, his steps slower now, the weight of the day's work settling into his shoulders. In one hand, he carried a small bundle wrapped in paper, 2 sweet rolls from the market. Slung over the other arm were several folded tarps, worn but still strong. Maya's eyes widened. "Yes, thank you, Uncle." She reached for one, the sweet smell of bread rising into the warm air. From inside, Quinn appeared, brushing dust from her hands. She glanced at the tarps, then at the bread in Maya's hands, her brow knitting slightly. "You didn't have to buy that. Do you still have money left?" De shook his head lightly, not in denial, but in reassurance. "Don't worry about me. I can still manage." Maya, already halfway through her first bite, set the roll down on the low table and darted toward a clay water jar in the corner. "Let me get you water." The 3 of them stood there in the narrow living space, unfolding the tarps, Maya grinning with crumbs at the corner of her mouth, and Quinn watching them both, the weight of her earlier concern easing into something quieter. Outside, the light continued to fade, and the first hint of evening cool slipped in through the open doorway. The air carried the smell of warm bamboo and faint smoke from distant cooking fires. De set the tarps down beside the wall, unrolling one carefully across the ground to check for tears. The fabric was worn but strong, good enough to keep the rain out. Maya lingered by the doorway, watching him work. "Uncle, what's the tarp for?" she asked, her voice curious. De glanced up, smiling faintly. "To cover your roof," he said. "So when the rain comes, you and your mom won't get wet, and the dust from outside won't fall in while you sleep." From the corner of the yard, Quinn stepped closer, her eyes following the length of the tarp. "Be careful up there," she warned. "Those old beams can be tricky." De gave a small nod. "I've done this before. I'll make it strong. Strong enough for any storm." He set the ladder against the side of the house and began to climb, the wooden rungs creaking under his weight. Above, the roof told its own story, leaves frayed from seasons of wind, patches worn thin by years of sun, gaps where the rain had made its way through. Below, Maya picked up a coil of rope, holding it up to him. "Here, Uncle." "Thanks, Maya," he said, reaching down to take it from her. "Stand back a little. Don't let the dust fall into your eyes." From her spot by the ladder, Quinn steadied its base with both hands. De tied the corners securely to the beams. The wind lifted the edges once or twice, fluttering like a sail, but his hands were quick, practiced. By the time the last knot was tied, Quinn looked up and allowed herself a small, relieved smile. "I think we can rest easy now," she said. De climbed down slowly, brushing dust from his hands. "It's done right," he replied. "This will keep you safe through any rain." For a moment, none of them spoke. The house stood quiet but somehow felt sturdier, more certain, like it had been given a second breath, just in time for the coming season. The air had cooled by the time the work on the roof was done, and a gentle breeze swept through the yard. The scent of fresh canvas still lingered faintly, mixing with the earthy smell of bamboo. In the soft light of early evening, BB, the little dog with the limp, ambled clumsily across the open space, his tail wagging with uneven rhythm. Maya followed close behind, her laughter light and unguarded as she tried to match his unsteady steps. Quinn stood by the doorway, her gaze lifted to the new tarp stretched neatly above her head. "No more leaks," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I feel lighter now, duh." Her small voice carried a sincerity that made Da smile. Inside, the house felt different. Safer, warmer, with a quiet energy. Quinn moved toward the corner where the cooking stove sat. She knelt to gather a few sticks of dry wood, stacking them carefully before striking a match. The flame caught quickly, its orange light dancing against the darkened walls, filling the room with the first crackle of heat. Maya appeared beside her, watching the fire with wide eyes. "Mom, what are we having tonight?" Quinn's hands moved easily, rinsing a bundle of fresh greens in a shallow basin. "Vegetable soup," she said, "and a little braised pork to go with rice." The rhythm of preparation settled into the space, the soft chop of the knife against the wooden board, the hiss as vegetables met the boiling broth, the slow, fragrant simmer of meat turning tender in its sauce. Da stepped into the doorway, leaning against the frame as he breathed in the scent. "Smells good," he remarked. "Looks like dinner will be worth the wait." Quinn glanced over her shoulder, the firelight catching the curve of her smile. "You worked all afternoon," she said. "Make sure you eat enough to make up for it." Maya giggled, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "And save some for BB too." The dog, as if understanding, thumped his tail against the floorboards, the sound blending into the small, steady music of a home settling into evening. By the time the rice was steamed and the last pot came off the fire, night had settled over the yard. The world outside the bamboo walls was dark and still, save for the occasional chirp of a cricket. Inside, the glow of the oil lamp spread across the low table, turning the steam rising from the dishes into soft curls of gold. The meal was simple, but satisfying. "This is good," Da said, tasting the pork slowly. "I wasn't sure if I'd like it after cooking for myself all day, but it's perfect." Quinn shook her head, a faint flush in her cheeks. "It's nothing fancy," she replied. "But I'm glad you enjoy it." Maya was already halfway through her rice, bits of green leaf clinging to her lips. She leaned toward her mother and whispered, just loud enough for Da to hear, "Don't forget to give some to BB." The air inside the small bamboo house carried the warmth of food, of shelter, and of the quiet relief that comes when, at least for tonight, the worries of the day are behind you. Dinner had ended, and the bowls sat rinsed and turned upside down on the low shelf. Outside, the night was deep and unbroken, save for the faint chorus of crickets and the occasional rustle of wind in the bamboo. Inside, the oil lamp burned lower, its flame shrinking, casting longer shadows on the walls. Maya, her eyes heavy with sleep, leaned against her mother's side. "Uncle Da," she murmured, "come back tomorrow." Da smiled gently at her, the lines at the corners of his eyes softening. "I will," he promised. Quinn brushed the hair from her daughter's forehead. "Go on, Maya. Time to sleep." Only the sound of the wind remained. Da and Quinn sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around them. The yard lay in a wash of silver under the moonlight, the new tarp on the roof catching a faint gleam. Quinn's gaze followed it for a long moment before she spoke. "Are you really going to build a new house?" Da nodded, his voice steady. "Yes, but first, I need to finish things with my old place. My ex-wife will have to come back so we can settle everything. Once that's done, I'll start a place for the three of us, solid and safe." Quinn kept her eyes on the yard, as though picturing it. "And the farm you've talked about?" "It's part of the plan," he said, his tone warming. "A small piece of land where we can grow vegetables, keep fish in the pond, let chickens and ducks roam free. A place where we live off what we grow, where we don't have to worry every day about what's next." Quinn gave a faint smile, but there was a trace of hesitation in it. "It sounds peaceful. I just hope nothing stands in the way." He turned toward her, the lamplight catching the quiet conviction in his face. "It will happen. As long as we keep going, we'll get there." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind thread through the trees, the sound almost like a distant river. Then he rose slowly to his feet. "I should go. I'll come back in the morning." Quinn stood as well, her hands lingering for a moment on the edge of her shawl. "All right. Be careful on the road." He gave her one last look, a nod that carried both gratitude and promise, before stepping into the cool darkness. Quinn watched until his figure disappeared down the path. The wind carried a different weight now, whispering through the bamboo leaves with a sharper edge, rattling the new tarp overhead as if testing its strength. A rooster crowed somewhere in the distance, but the sound felt subdued, almost weary. Quinn stepped out onto the porch, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The sky was streaked with thin, fast-moving clouds, the kind that spoke of weather turning. Maya was still asleep inside, her breathing soft and even, while BB lay curled beside the doorway, one ear twitching at the breeze. She scanned the path beyond the gate, her eyes narrowing slightly. It was empty now, but something about the stillness felt unusual, like the pause before a conversation takes an unexpected turn. From far off, faint footsteps approached, uneven against the hard-packed dirt. At first, they were too distant to place, but with each moment, they grew clearer. Whoever it was, they were coming straight toward the house. Quinn stayed where she was, her hand resting on the porch post, heart beating just a touch faster. By the time the figure rounded the bend, the light had shifted enough to reveal the outline of a man. He wasn't and though Quinn didn't yet know why, the sight of him made her fingers tighten on the wood. The man slowed as he reached the gate, his shadow falling across the yard. "Is de here?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was something in it, something that made the morning air feel heavier. Quinn hesitated. The tarp overhead rustled again, a low, restless sound.